Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
I'm Cyndi.
Hi, I'm Renny.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be going over a musical, which can technically be deemed a play that Renny selected. And it's called The Music Man by Meredith Willson. I happened to read it on my phone. Usually I like to read a physical copy, but the best copy that I could get was the libretto script off of my phone.
I read it on the computer. I couldn't get a book of it from Amazon.
I got a book of it, but it's written as a novel rather than a script. You have a discussion starter?
Yes. How come this con artist, as the music man, as the man who's going to produce a band in which he actually doesn't know anything, he doesn't know a trombone from his elbow, has become enduringly popular ever since the 50s when it first came out?
Where he succeeded was what he was able to bring to a community rather than the technicalities of things. He knew how to bring people together, what kind of devices he needed in order to have people contribute a more positive difference, not just to one another, but to their own self-esteems. For instance, with Marion, where he was attracted to her, she was completely turned off by him because she saw him as that.
To start.
Yeah, to start. He was this con artist filled with hot air. When he brought the instruments and he made a difference in Winthrop and his self-esteem, where that really made him feel something. It doesn't matter whether or not your package is legitimate. What matters is you're making a difference for the better toward other people.
Well, in this, we know he's gone from Ohio to Illinois because at the beginning the salesman says he's wrecked everything for them. Every time they go through a state and he's been there before them, nobody wants to see a salesman. And then he's now ended up in Iowa. But this is where both he and Marion, and of course her brother Winthrop, all change. That's not necessarily true all the time. Our big heroes like Superman and Spider-Man and Iron Man and so forth are essentially static characters that don't change that much. We expect them to be heroes and they act out heroically. Preston creating this character, and he created it on Broadway, and then it closes in 1961 and they had started filming the movie, so he was covered by Eddie Albert and Burt Parks in it when he went to Hollywood. He came back at the very end of the last 2 weeks when the play was closing, that he did the last 2 weeks of the play. It's so dynamic, and there's things in it that are so funny. I don't remember this at all. He says to Marianne, she talks about how he's facing down the town and that makes him brave. And he said, well, no, because this comes from Julius Caesar. He says, they say that cowards die 1,000 times, but the brave only die 500 times. I don't know whether it's because he can't really say the quote correctly or he just wants to be funny. It is supposed to elect laughs, and I laughed when I read it. I don't remember seeing it.
It's an interesting approach that he has in mind, because he is very brave.
In a way, yes.
In a way. He's confident in his own package, even though his package is filled with hot air, if you want to say that much. But there's substance to it, too, though.
Well, he thinks if he builds people up and he built children up, and there is something to this, we have this in education, they will be better, they will improve, they will play, even if they don't know what it is. And of course that works for him, and because of the magic of the musical and movie, it does work.
And it's funny how he one of the first things he does is goes directly against the billiard parlor.
Yes, the pool. That
is because he feels that that's going to make the youth more lazy and concede to this life of mindless pleasure.
Trouble in the City?
Yes.
I read that Meredith Willson started it, I have never seen or heard this before, based on just a boy who can't do much of anything, and the play is called The Silver Triangle. It's not quite a musical, but the triangle is something that the boy can play. The boy morphs into Winthrop, who has a lisp, who becomes subsidiary, really, in the play itself. But as he developed, there originally were something like 40 to 44 songs. They cut them in half. But what they're left with is really interesting and really terrific. I just love, for instance, when the women do the hen picking thing, cheap a little, chick, chick, cheap a little. Done very well, very clever.
It's interesting how he
Yes.
depicts people within a society.
Yes, and they work that way. And unfortunately, women often are a little bit that way, definitely.
Of that nature.
Yes, yes. And your Lily, who's does the modern dancing and runs the society in the town, and you have to be in her good graces to be in the good graces of the town. And her husband, who is the mayor, and he's wrong about everything. No matter what it is he wants, whatever he's going to do, it doesn't work. There's one place where he says he was going to give a speech, and he said, and it's raining, and he said, but the weather said it was going to be fair. And that's the way it works for him all the time. Every time he gets up to do something, it doesn't work out that way for him. But that's good for the Music Man, because it works in his favor that the mayor is not doing very well.
Yeah, and it was, it's really a very powerful connection that he makes with the town when he's, and he gets them to dream, which is probably why it became so popular.
Yes.
I mean, and then when he's beginning to touch lives in little ways, and then which is making eventually Marion to see him in a different light, even though she knows full well he's full of con. But how do you not love a man who can get your kid brother to speak?
Yes, yes.
I love the scene in the library though when she asked, "Are you going to take any do you want any library books?" And he says, "I want the librarian." Then he annoys her to the point that she slaps him, but he ducks. And Tommy, who is a native resident who becomes his assistant.
He's running around with the mayor and Eulily's daughter that they don't want. Yes.
Yeah, when she tries to slap Harold, the Professor Harold Hill, the salesman, he ducks and slaps Tommy, which is that's pretty. There are those very interesting moments.
Well, he changes and becomes a real person, a regular person, who's going to he's going to stay there and he's going to have the band. And she changes because she's been very isolated in herself and not outgoing, and the typical so-called librarian who only goes shh. Doesn't speak to anybody and doesn't do anything, although she gives piano lessons.
Yes.
She is a little bit musical herself.
Amaryllis is the student.
Yes.
And she has a thing for Winthrop, even though she teases him.
Yes. In the movie, Winthrop is, I can't think of his name. I just saw him on MASH.
Oh, Ronnie Howard.
Yes. He was terrific.
That's the best
He was
version.
Terrific. That he had to list. I see him once in a while because I see reruns of, what was the early show he was on?
Andy Griffith. Then he was on Happy Days.
Yes, and Happy Days. Well, when I saw him on MASH, that was about probably when they were doing Happy Days, because he's supposed to be about 15, 16 at the time.
He was only, if anything, he was occasional on MASH.
Well, he's only there once.
Okay, well, as a guest. Okay.
Yes, yes. But I just saw him. Okay, he's saved by Hawkeye because he has joined, his girlfriend left him for somebody else who had joined and gotten a medal. So he joined so he could get a medal. And he used his brother's certificate because he's really 15, he's not 18. And so Hawkeye steals somebody else's Purple Heart and gives it to him, and then gets him sent home based on his appendicitis. So that's a positive whatever. But yes, he was terrific. Considering he grew up to be a very fine director, he had an incredible life as an actor. And this was just one of his parts.
It was very interesting the way that it was set up, the musical numbers. My favorite is Till There Was You. I recall the version from Jerry Vale. I think that's the best version.
I really like all of it. I like the fact that there's not that much real dialogue. There's just a tremendous amount of song, even though when some of it is talking song. One leads very much into the other. And when you think that it started years before as something entirely different, talking about a triangle of all things, and that it came into this is just miraculous. Although I also read that he based it on his town in Iowa, that Meredith Willson is from. Marion was based on a woman he knew in Texas, and so he took a lot of autobiographical material and got it to work very well together. I like her mother. In the movie, his sidekick is Buddy Hackett.
Marcellus is...
They did a really good job. I can't remember the play enough. As many times as I've seen it, I remember the movie more clearly. They had a good cast that worked really well together. Sometimes that doesn't always work.
Yeah, especially in a film version. I would be very weary to see how a film version of today would. Then again, I don't really have much faith in the film industry.
Well, the film industry today is killing itself, so I don't know what it's going to do. Finally, at Disney, they brought back Iger to probably trying to straighten out Disney. They lost something like $16 billion last year. That's a lot of money. We don't do a musical anymore. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you still did have musicals, but it's one of the last big musicals at 62. There's not too much really after that. The big MGM days tend to be really over, and we're not doing them so much anymore. But yes, there's a tremendous amount of dreaming, color, uplift, defined characters, good action, movement, especially in a play. They can't always move too much, but they do in this play. They still move around quite a bit, in and out, up and down, back and forth, and works very well. And they bring in the young children to a certain degree, so it covers the generations. I've just always loved the whole thing. If we had to give it a number, I would give it a 5.5. It's one of the best products I've ever seen as a play or a movie. And of course, I never read the script previously. It looks very much like what they put on the stage, and what they put on the screen is very much like what really comes off the page. There's not that much difference. The only thing I mentioned before is they have showing of a band playing 76 trombones in the first act that I don't think is normally actually incorporated there, and they wait for the end for that. But they might. I don't know. There might be versions where they have done that, but I don't remember that. So there are things that are a little bit different in places. Sometimes you read a play, and what you've seen, they are very different. But I would say that's not true of The Music Man.
No, it's very close, actually.
Yes.
In fact,
Yes.
I really like this. I
Yes.
liked it so well.
Yes.
I watched I went after I read the play. I went and I watched the movie with Ron Howard, and so that gave us also Shirley Jones.
Yes.
And then there was the one with Hugh Jackman, and then there was also the one with Matthew Broderick.
Oh, there's a Matthew Broderick. I didn't even know it. I'll look it up.
Yes.
How would you rate it, Cyndi?
I'd give it a 5.
I would give it a 4. I was going to give it a 3.5, but because I'm really beginning to have second thoughts about the fact that it may have exceeded its limits more than I thought it did. Because I thought there was a sense of where the characters could have made it even further, but perhaps the structure may have kept them constrained from doing more than they did.
Well, yeah, they're in a small town. They're in an isolated state. They're before television, telephones, and all that kind of business. So
I would have said
they
more
go
so.
as far maybe as they can go.
I mean,
Yes.
more so in their personalities and their depth. Based on the structure, you don't really get as much. I think that there's so much potential for these characters that you want more.
Well, there's really much of it is cliched. Marion kind of is cliched to start, and then she changes. He's cliched to start, and he changes. The mayor doesn't really change. He's a cliche. His wife is a cliche. But they build them to be major characters that have influence and actually have interesting speeches. Lily, all the time when she doesn't want something, like she says, Balzac, which was a terrible thing to say at the time.
With the mayor, the society around him changes, so he pretty much is.
Well, he stuck with it at the end.
He's stuck because even the constable
Yes.
is in favor of, and
Well,
the constable's meant to enforce what the mayor.
Well, they're saying, oh, there's my
wants.
Johnny with the tuba, and there's Nancy with the clarinet, and yes, and everybody was just swept up.
The only one I really didn't have much fondness for was Charlie. He was just self-serving with his issues with Professor Hill. Well, Professor Hill...
Oh, well, they wanted to get him, yes.
Yeah, he is a competition. But I'm sticking with a 4-star rating, but it's still something that I would be inclined to pursue even more. If you are interested in reading this play, I think that if you Google The Music Man, the script, the libretto PDF is probably the best outlet, even though there are some penciled in edits where they'll have, like, they make mention to certain things, but they're very minimal. Unfortunately, I haven't come across a proper physical script. What I thought was going to be the script when I got it as a book, it was just a novelization.
I think what you have to do is you have to contract a license to produce it, and then you could get a script.
Possibly, yeah. If someone like Concord Theatricals or...
Otherwise, it may not be out in general.
Yeah, there is that to take into account. They have all of those the royalty. Yeah, technicality. They have to pay royalties because it's a very funny thing because there's people that see the play genre as something that's meant to be seen, which, in a way, that argument is valid. But then there's some of us that like to read the play and view it as literature.
This certainly works better on the stage and on the screen because you cannot hear the music in the script.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, granted,
you need to see it.
A Streetcar Named Desire, when I've read it, it does incorporate auditory aspects. However, I think that The Music Man requires more viewership. I think that A Streetcar Named Desire, the auditory direction is a bit simpler, and you can imagine certain things.
Well, that's still major dialogue. Yes.
Yes. It's completely dialogue based. There's no singing where it's not a musical like The Music Man is a music. I want to thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel. And for now and as always, we encourage you to keep reading.